Welcome into the 40 Acres Football Podcast. I'm Justin Gooseman once again with Robert Gonsolin and Joseph Duffy. Obviously, a huge win for Texas in round one at DKR against Clemson. Felt like Texas was in control for most of the game. Clemson made a valiant effort to come back, and then Texas defense, as they've done all year, came through big time with a big goal line stop in the fourth quarter to seal the deal. Fellas, what were y'all's main takeaways from this game versus Clemson, and how can Texas build on what they did in round one in order to continue that success throughout the college football playoff?
Yeah, I'll start this one. I definitely think the run game took a front seat in this past matchup, whereas in previous games this season, previous games this season we've seen flashes of it, but it really looks like Quintravion Wisner and Jaden Blue and the offensive line as a whole just took over this game and was a sole driving factor in why the Longhorns were able to pull this one out so dominantly. We've seen games where, the defense, they really stepped it up, and they're the reason why they won a lot of games. Like, take for instance, there's Vanderbilt or Arkansas with the whole defense stepping up. And then we've had the passing game make flashes like against Michigan, early audience, Colorado State, Mississippi State, Florida. But right here, I think it's where the running game really came alive when it's been dead at other points of the season, like in the SEC championship. It really came alive when Texas needed it most, and it actually added an asset to Texas's uh, game as a whole in this college football playoff action because we know the passing game is there, Arch or Quinn playing. We know the defense is there. Where's the running game been? And for the running game for Blue and Wisner to take over in this matchup right here and be the full driving force of why the Longhorns won this game, I think that's huge for the Longhorns because it actually adds to what Texas already has. And it shows the college football playoff world, hey, our run game is really great too. Y'all better be ready for it. And so I just think the offensive line and the run game is the whole reason why Texas just looks so crisp in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I expected the defense to do what they did. I mean, we saw Big Bill Norton have that big stop in the interior late in the game. What an amazing stop that was, similar to the A&M stop with Ethan Burke a few weeks prior, the second goal line stand, as Craig Way was calling it, the biggest stop of the year at the time. But also that run game, like Robert was saying. I mean, Quintravion Wisner and Jaden Blue, that was the story of the game. Quinn Ewers didn't have to do too much because this offense was getting so many yards a carry. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they got, let's see, yeah, 292 yards rushing. You're not losing a game if you get that, right? In the modern D1 FBS contest, 292 rushing yards combined. And Jaden Blue, I know he's got a lot of criticism in the past, myself included. I've been one of them to criticize him in the past. When you look at the non-conference start that they had in the season, the Texas Longhorns, it seemed like he was going to, of course, be the lead back after a lot of injuries to this running back room. Now, he could have had maybe a Jonathan Brooks kind of season, a guy coming out of nowhere, feasting and being the RB1 for the Texas Longhorns. And then you start to see those fumbles and those mistakes, and he started to fall a little bit back towards playing time, and you're seeing his confidence kind of build back up. It's games like these that you need to really, bring your confidence back. And when you have a team like Georgia who is really, stifled this rushing attack, a game like this against the Clemson Tigers, who won the ACC championship, you get to play this game at home, of course. And when you have a guy like when Travion Wiseman can be your, tough runner, but also Jalen Blue can be your breakaway runner, it's a great attack that Texas has for them. And it shows that, it doesn't matter really who you put in there at times. This system that Sarkisian really implements, it can literally have anybody feast. And Jaden Blue, it looked like he was jogging on some of those plays. I mean, the guy is just, he is a weapon for this offense. This rushing attack came alive. I believe it was, what should I say, 6.1 yards a carry as a team. Just incredible this past Saturday to watch. And what a well-deserved win.
Yeah, I mean, y'all said it the most, but the defense, they had some struggles. Cade Klubnik balled out. Some of the throws he was making in the second half, I really thought that Clemson was going to make a run. I was definitely nervous. I don't know if y'all were nervous. It felt like some of those passes he was getting right over defenders' heads, dropping them in the breadbasket on multiple occasions. There was one drive in the third quarter. I can't remember who it was on, when he had those two consecutive deep shots that were just right in the breadbasket. And then they scored to cut it to a one score game. And it felt like that could really be the turning point in the game. Clemson started to get on a roll. There was still plenty of time for them to score again. But then Jaden Blue comes out and, like you said, a 70-yard touchdown run, I believe it was, something ridiculous. And he legitimately looked like he was gliding out there. And if he, like you said, Joe, if he can limit those turnovers, those fumbles, he can be such a weapon for this Texas offense. And it's unfortunate that early in the year he had so many turnovers. He kind of lost the trust of Steve Sarkisian, because he wasn't really utilized a whole lot out of a worry that there was going to be a fumble or a big mistake. And now it feels like every time he steps out onto the field, when he's attacking the line of scrimmage, he's got two hands over the ball. He's really focusing on controlling the football. And when he does that, I think he's really difficult to stop. And then you add in Quintravion Wisner and the power that he's been playing with, just the ability to bowl over defenders. It was really a great 1-2 punch. And if Texas can really use that to their advantage going forward, they're going to be such a difficult team to stop all year. Looking forward to this season, we thought about CJ Baxter and what they were going to have in this backfield and how that was going to help Quinn Ewers play a lot of play action, and take those deep shots. But obviously, when Baxter goes down, that rushing attack wasn't as strong. But now feels like it's back on its feet, feels like it's really rearing to go. And if they can lean on that going forward, I think Arizona State is in a world of trouble. Um, so it was an exciting game nonetheless. I think Texas had one of the more difficult draws playing this Clemson team, as we saw. Indiana didn't have it. SMU didn't have it. I think Clemson, with the way they had played going into this game, I think they were definitely one of the tougher draws. And I think that's a good thing for Texas to really get them prepared going forward. But let's kind of think about Arizona State for a minute. Obviously, Texas's offense looked really good. The defense played really well when they needed to. But Arizona State has a pretty potent offensive attack led by Cam Scatabo. Scataboo. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it pronounced both ways all
I've heard
season.
everything, bro.
But he's a powerful running back. And what I will say is every single time Texas has gone into a matchup and had to play against a team with 100% focusing on the running game, they've dominated. I mean, you look back to the Big 12 championship last year against Ollie Gordon. They dominated that game. I really can't see a world where Texas gets destroyed on the ground. But I want to hear your thoughts on this Arizona State team, ahead of a big matchup in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I think Scatabo is a phenomenal player, and if you don't prepare for a run game, a run attack like the one Arizona State has, you're gonna struggle. But I do think obviously that Texas will prepare, and that this isn't gonna be a run team that Texas hasn't already seen this season. All credit to Scatabo and what he's bringing to this offense. I just think that if Texas can prepare for it, they can be ready. What I do worry about is the focus that the Longhorns will put on Scatabo, and then they're going to rely on the Sun Devils will rely on Levitt to air it out and open up the passing game. And I just feel like it's either naturally, this is not just Texas, but any team going into this game, they'll either rely on they'll either rely on defending Scatabo, or they're going to rely on defending Levitt. And I just think that what I see most needed for Texas in this game is a very fine balance between being ready for Scatabo in the run game, being there, which Texas can be ready for. We've seen the defensive line go to action. We've seen Bill Norton, we've seen Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Vernon Broughton. We've seen them all come up big. We've seen them be good against a good running team like Clemson or A&M, but can they also at that same time manage Levitt and be prepared for him to air the ball out? Now, I think they can do that. The safeties are definitely there. The cornerbacks are definitely there. Manny Muhammad had a little bit of a rough fourth quarter at the Clemson game, but I just think that his team was getting tired. And Manny Muhammad, great player, but I think that yes, if you're Texas, focus on Scatabo, find a way to limit him to very short yardage runs, find a way to stop him. But once they start opening up the passing game, if you're the Longhorns, be ready for what Levitt can do because he is also a great quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a good point by Robert because he shouldn't be slept on at all. He's a very solid quarterback who knows how to manage the ball and not turn it over. He doesn't do, of course, as much in the offense as Cam Scatabo, but he's still a respectable quarterback that shouldn't just be slept on, in my opinion, by Longhorns fans. But I think another thing that Texas has to do is limit, of course, the penalties. Good things happen when you don't commit stupid penalties. 11 penalties Texas had in the SEC championship against Atlanta. Against Clemson at DKR, they had two penalties. Clemson had five, I believe. Yes, they had five for 65 yards. Texas had two for 10. And by the way, this is the same official that people were afraid of coming into this game in Rod Snodgrass. He was the official last year in Texas versus Washington in that Sugar Bowl game that some Longhorns fans were a little upset at for some calls, but it ended up being all right. Texas played smart. There's also a few plays where, people were saying this could have been a penalty if Quinn didn't just slide down and stuff and kind of scratching their head at why he just decided to take a knee right there instead of throwing it downfield when there's a man downfield. So Texas has to limit their penalties against Arizona State. And if they're going to try to feast against a rush attack, which they usually dominate against, if it's supposed to be at least a one-dimensional offense, they're going to have to take advantage of just that rush attack and not try to commit those stupid penalties and keep allowing them to move the chains and get into the red zone. So I really think that's the key to the game, mainly for Texas, is the penalties because we've seen how it kills them, even in a low-scoring affair against Georgia in the SEC championship. When you commit 11 penalties, miss field goals, have a lot of defensive miscues, I mean, anybody could have a chance against this Texas team. They are not infallible. We saw the secondary look a little bit spotty against Clemson. You could say it's more Klubnik. You could say it's a little bit of the secondary falling off. I can see each argument. But the secondary didn't look like the same secondary that we saw a few weeks ago and against Georgia. And that's credit to Kate Klubnik and Garrett Riley in that offense. They did a great job. So seeing how they performed this past Saturday, I really do think Arizona State has a great chance. And it's a neutral site game. It's any man's ball game. The stakes are higher than ever before at this moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you talk about the officials, that's something you don't want to think about, but when you have officials that you've struggled with in the past, your style of football might really just be illegal in some instances. We see that all the time in the NFL. We see it all the time in college football. Certain officials call the games differently. And if Texas can't go in and execute without tugging on the jersey and um, chopping down on defenders, it's going to be tough to execute in the red zone. That's been an issue all season long. As you get into the red zone, a couple penalties push you back a little ways, and all of a sudden it's a lot more difficult to reach the end zone on a short field when you got to go further to pick up a first down. I'll say this. I'm looking for a few things in this game versus Arizona State. One, does Steve Sarkisian play the math game ever? I mean, against Clemson, up 14 points, you got a chance to take a three possession lead, went for it on fourth down, didn't get it, and it's still just a two possession ball game. I believe that was early in the second quarter. It didn't end up coming back to haunt them. But when you have a chance to take a three possession lead, you take a three possession lead, in my opinion. I know 4th and 2, 4th and 3 are really, really tempting to go for, but you were pretty deep in Clemson territory and your defense had played a great game. If you can go up 3 scores, I think that's always what you have to do. Now, if you're up 5 points and a field goal only puts you up eight, that's a different story, right? You have a chance to go down, score, and then go up 2 possessions. But in my opinion, it's been a tough watch at times when Texas has a chance to go up multiple scores with a field goal, and they decide to go for it on 4th down and they don't get it. That's been an issue since Steve Sarkisian got here. I get it, you're an aggressive coach, but at this point in the college football playoff, I think you have to play the math game at times, and he didn't do that against Clemson. Now, the next things I'm looking at are y'all talked about Sam Levitt. He's a really underrated quarterback. I think he's a talented quarterback for sure. But Texas can tee off on the run, and then you're gonna have Jahdae Barron guarding Jordan Tyson, or at least in my opinion, he should shadow Tyson all game long. That's their best receiver. He's got 75 catches on the season. Their next best receiver is Cam Scatabo with 37 receptions. I think if Texas can tee off on the run, I think they're really going to have a good day defensively, because you have guys in the secondary like Jade, like Gilbo, that can really control everybody else. Their next leading receiver after Scatabo is their tight end, Mateer, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And I think Texas can really lock those guys down. They don't have a potent wide receiver core, which I think is going to be an issue for Arizona State. Now, lastly, on the offensive side for Texas, Arizona State does not get after the quarterback all that much. Only 21 sacks on the season. I think that's an area of the game where Texas can excel, give Quinn Ewers plenty of time, and really run the ball down their throats. When you don't push up opponents back, especially in a Big 12 conference that's not the strongest in the offensive line, only 21 sacks on the year. I think Texas is looking at that and kind of licking their chops at what they're going to be able to draw up for Quinn Ewers. He's hit the deep ball a lot more successfully as of late. And if you can give him time, I have no doubt that Quinn Ewers can put the ball where it needs to be. So those are the kind of things that I'm watching right now ahead of this game that I think could have a really big impact.
And I mean, Arizona State has not lost a game since October 19th. By the way, the game they lost, I still cannot believe it to this day. I mean, Cincinnati, of course, in Cincinnati, that was a head-scratching game. They got held to 14 points by Scott Satterfield and Cincinnati Bearcats, who are now in the Big 12, of course. And uh, not losing a game like that means they're doing something right. It's been 2 months, all right, and they haven't lost a game in that stretch, and they've just been rolling and almost really they've pounded a lot of the teams they played against as well. Of course, Arizona, the rival, the in-state matchup, but also the Big 12 championship, which I was not expecting a blowout in that game at all in Jerry World. That was insane to watch. I couldn't believe like, Iowa State had no answer, absolutely none, and I expected much better from the Cyclones. But yeah, when you put it like that, um, 21 sacks as a team, Steve Sarkisian should be looking his chops for sure. Absolutely. And I know we haven't heard many status updates yet. I haven't heard many on my part, but we know there were some injuries and some guys getting banged up, like Jake Majors and Cam Williams, this past Saturday against Clemson. So I haven't heard much about them for the moment, but. I still think this Texas O line is deep enough to at least, halt some pressure from Arizona State and give Quinn Ewers some time and possibly take more deep shots. Who knows? His deep ball has looked much better these past few weeks, past 2 weeks, in my opinion. And he's drawing more flags. I don't know if he's trying to do that, but Matthew Golden had a play where, of course, he caught that contested ball. Would you say it was underthrown? Would you say it was on target? You could argue that the DB got there in time to make a good play in the ball and that it wasn't going to be a touchdown anyway. Or do you say that Quinn Ewers could have thrown it out a little bit more on his outstretched hands and it could have been a touchdown? I really don't know the answer to that one. But
I think it could have been a better thrown ball, but when a
yeah,
when a deep ball is caught, I don't think you can complain, right?
right,
Like
right.
that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Quinn Ewers could air it out much more if he has a good enough pocket. I expect him to have maybe a game that's similar to who knows, the Big 12 championship last year. I mean, if this pass rush is just not as good as you're saying, I expect that there is some better attention to detail too, not just those intermediate routes they like to throw, the crossers and the mesh, at least going down for some post routes like we saw last game against Clemson, a little bit more because, like you were saying, they don't have a lot of pressure coming off this edge for the Sun Devils. I like to see them air it out a little bit more and give Quinn a chance, just to throw it downfield if the run game is not feasting. Because if it is not feasting, that's what you can do. But good rushing attack sets up great passing. And so I look forward to seeing what Quintrevon Wise and Jaden Blue can do from the backfield. Because if they are rolling, you don't have to worry about Quinn Ewers throwing the ball deep at all. Just moving the chains and managing the game.
Yeah. So I don't see why, to build off of what you're saying, Joe, I don't see why there's a reason why Quinn Ewers should not air it out a little bit more. Think about it in the past 3 to 4 games when he has aired it out. It's looked pretty good. I mean, going all the way back to A&M, it's looked pretty good. He aired it out against Georgia. I'm going to repeat myself one more time. It looked pretty good. I think that his interceptions that he's thrown in the past, those haven't really been on the deep balls, but more on the crossers, like the slants, or they've just been tipped on the comebacks, like the Georgia one, or the one against man, the one against Clemson, that was just bad luck. He hit DeAndre Moore right in the numbers, and I think that was just fault of receiver there. But I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and stuff like that's going to happen every game. But what point taken here is that I think that, yeah, why not? Quinn Ewers should air it out a little bit more. We've seen him connect in the deep ball quite a bit over the last couple of games. And I think that's what's ultimately going to get him looking like how he was looking last season or how he was looking against Michigan, is if he's given more chances to throw it downfield and kind of get his spark back. Because I think a lot of Texas fans who are riding behind Quinn Ewers, they know that when he can play his best ball, he's going to look really good. And I think that once he gets his confidence up, that will happen. And in order to get his confidence up, I think he needs to connect on a few passes downfield multiple times a game, not just one time like that Matthew Golden throw, but like that Matthew Golden reception, excuse me. But I think just letting him do that multiple times in the game, or not even on the deep ball, but just like midfield posts, deep crossers, deep passes, honestly, that pick up about a 25-yard gain. That's going to let Quinn Ewers get his confidence back and make him look like how he's always looked early in the season before he got hurt and last season. Now, with the run attack, I think that like the injuries, we've learned that they're not as serious as we initially thought they were. We think that Wisner will be back. We think that Majors will be back. Cam Williams, we're not sure yet. Or was it DJ Campbell? I think it was Cam Williams, right?
Yeah, it was Cam Williams.
It was Cam Williams. So with this run attack right here, even if Wisner is good to go, and Wisner's been playing great for Texas, I think that with what we've seen from Jaden Blue last game, and you assume the fumbles have been dealt with already, you've cleaned up that issue. I think you rely on Jaden Blue, not more than Wisner, but more this game. You rely on Blue more than usual this game just to make sure Wisner's not getting banged up even further, even more. And you like you like the you like what you've seen from Blue last game. You like the flashes, you like the cuts he's making, you like his speed. I think that you're almost a little bit more encouraged to use Jaden Blue more against a team like Arizona State than when you were against maybe an A&M or a Georgia in the SEC championship.
100%. Especially because, whenever you're going against I don't want to disrespect Arizona State and say they're not as physical, but I don't think they're as physical in the trenches as some of those SEC schools are. So yeah, I agree. You use Jaden Blue, you try and utilize his speed uh, to break through that D line and see if he can pop some big ones. And then I think you slow down the tempo a little bit with Wisner in the backfield. Um, let's do some predictions. I know we're eager to give our predictions that almost never seem to be accurate, especially after last week. I think we all struggled a little bit on our first round predictions, but regardless, a chance to turn the page this week. What do we think this final score is looking like?
Ooh, that sounds like an episode title. Turn the page. I don't know. It seems like you dropped that one in there on us for a reason. I don't even remember my prediction last week. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I said something like low 20s. Did I say that? Wasn't it like 24, 21 or something?
I
I
believe
don't remember.
so. I
I don't
believe
remember.
so.
I think this game is going to be a smacking. I'm sorry. I mean, this could come back to bite me. I don't know. But I just don't see Arizona competing in the fourth quarter with Texas. I think it'll be a close game in the first half because they're a CFP team. They're a college football playoff team that's a loss since October 19th. I think it could be a competitive game in the beginning, but I think Texas will really start to pull away at the end of the third quarter, middle, third, all the way to the end of the third, and it will be kind of what you see in the score line, really a 12 and a half favorite for Texas. I think that the run game will feast once again. Even if Trey Wisner weren't to be 100%, no one really is at this point of the season. But even if he weren't to be 100% and Jaden Blue is doing still good and he can at least find some spark from the backfield, I think this running game will feast. I think Quinn Ewers will have enough time in the pocket to hit some shots and get some touchdowns to Golden and Helm. I don't know much about Isaiah Bond. Is he projected to play in this game, this
I'm
next
not
Wednesday?
sure. I think he's still a game time decision.
Yeah, and so I mean, even regarding that, Golden and Helm have done a great job by themselves too. And DeAndre Moore, even though he had a little bit of a rocky game um, against Clemson, had the ball bounce off his hands, creating that interception right to the numbers, like Robert Gonsolin was saying. I think this past game will still be fine. I don't see much trouble for this Texas offense, and we know what this Texas defense can do for the majority of the time. They know how to stop the run. They know how to well, for the most part, the Clemson game, the run defense wasn't amazing, but it looked, better than a lot of teams. But this Texas defense knows how to get stops when they're called upon, and they were not the reason Texas lost to Georgia in these past two, in these two losses this season, especially in the SEC championship. So I would say that this should be a smacking by Texas, in my opinion. I think they win this game 38-21.
Yeah, so I was saying earlier that Texas needs to really make sure that they can game plan against Scatterbo and Levitt at the same time. Scatterbo being a bigger threat on the offense from a defensive perspective. But I do think that Texas will be able to do that and manage both sides, both aspects of an offense, passing and running. And so I said this against, I said this after the A&M game and before the SEC championship that, despite the turnovers in the second half, I really liked what I saw from Quinn Ewers in the first half. And that I thought he was, he had his mojo back. I thought he did. Obviously, he played well enough in the next game, but they lost. But I kind of have the same feeling here right now that, Quinn Ewers, he didn't do much he didn't do much against Clemson, but when he was doing something, he was playing really well, and the mistakes he made, it wasn't really his fault. We had the drop and it turned into an interception. You had the slide in the backfield, which we've learned he did that because there was an illegal lineman downfield. So I'll get to my point here and just say
Can,
that.
can I just say
Go
I'm a
ahead.
little mad. I'm a little mad at that. I didn't like that.
Get the repeated down versus losing
Come
5 yards
on,
and losing
man.
it down. I agree.
I
I agree.
People defending this. Come on.
Well,
You know,
I
eh,
don't know. I don't know what the trade-offs are on this. Illegal lineman downfield. What are the trade-offs here?
so essentially, every team is going to decline if you just, take a sack, basically. So it would have been either you throw the ball out of bounds, get the flag, it'd be 1st and 15, or you do what Quinn did and take that little sack 4 yards behind, or just give yourself up 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and it'd be 2nd and 14. So it could be first and 15, you replay the down, or it could be second and 14. Now you have less downs now because you basically just gave up a down. You gave yourself up. And I'm like, you might as well keep the first down and just try to get 15 yards in a few plays. That was my logic, but I guess I mean they're saying why even try to throw the ball if you're gonna get the penalty anyway, which I think is not a good mentality, at least for football. I don't know,
So
but we won,
that
so
that's a really good point right there. I think in that situation, yeah, I would almost rather take the first and 15. I think what I did like from Ewers in that, and maybe this is something that all quarterbacks spot easily. I don't know if it is or isn't, but like his ability to recognize the illegal lineman downfield and do something based off that. I'm not sure if all quarterbacks are that like easily able to recognize something like that, but I wouldn't have said anything if there was no flag or if he just threw the ball downfield. I wouldn't have said anything. I wouldn't have noticed. But my point here is that I feel like when I don't know how he'll do, but I feel like he'll be a little bit more confident to throw the ball downfield, to throw it on the shallow cross, the deep cross, than instead throw it to the check down here. I think he'll be more confident to do so in this game. And I think that they will rely on Jaden Blue more. I think they've cleaned up the fumbles. I think this is going to be, you know, a very like I think this is going to be a very complete game from Texas. We've seen one side of the ball do better than the others in previous matchups, most notably the defense playing better than the offense. But I think the offense will come together here and they will play a complete game, maybe one of the most complete we've seen all season. And I think that, Jane Blue is going to turn it on. I think Weiser will be there too, but I think that the final score here is going to be, with Quinn Ewers playing well, I think it's going to be 30, 38 to 14, 38 to 14.
So we got two blowouts, or I guess Joe, I wouldn't call yours a blowout, but it's a semi schwacking, if you
yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be complete domination as well. I hate to have all three of us come up here and just say Texas is going to dominate all the way through. But man, I don't see a world where Texas gets demolished on the ground. The only way Arizona State can win this game, in my opinion, is if they slow the pace down to I'm talking like they're churning out first downs every 3 plays and taking off 8 or 9 minutes on the clock on every possession. Um, that's really the only way I can see Arizona State winning this game is by tiring out that Texas defense and just continuing to churn out first downs. And I don't see that happening. I think Texas is going to be able to tee off on the run like they've done in the past against run heavy offenses. And I think the Texas offense against a D line that, like I said, only 21 sacks on the season, even with a couple injuries, Trevor Gooseby has looked phenomenal. So I'm not a whole lot worried about that. I think Texas is going to win 45 to 13. I think
Oh,
it's going to be
oh,
domination.
oh
Uh,
my God.
like I really do not think this game will be close. That could come back to bite me worse than anything I've ever said on this
I'm back to
podcast,
bite all of us.
but I don't think it's going to be close whatsoever.
Murder. The murder in
People
Peachball.
always say, I know that Arizona State's a new team to the Big 12, so they're more like a Pac-12 offense, but people always say don't underestimate those Big 12 offenses, but we'll see.
Classic Big 12 team, Arizona State.
A Big 12 a Big 12 championship if
Big
you
12
will between
champion.
Arizona State and Texas here.
A hallmark of Brett Yormark's conference.
With
It's
that,
actually insane. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to move on to the other bowl game or the other playoff games. Um, I say since we all think Texas is going to win this game, we leave Ohio State, Oregon to the last bowl game we talk about. So let's start with Penn State and Boise State. How do we think this game plays out? What are your predictions for this game?
Boise State, it's been a great season. listen, you've had a phenomenal run, but let's be honest. Ashton Jeanty cannot save you in this game. I really don't think he can. Unfortunately, I've played against this guy. I've seen this guy dominate throughout the year. I've seen people vouch and say he should be the rightful Heisman instead of the man who just has a lot of snaps in Travis Hunter. I've seen this argument play out all year long. But when you play against a Power Four team that was in the Big Ten championship in Penn State, I don't know how they're supposed to win this game. I really don't know how. And I don't think it's obviously because of Ashton Jeanty. I do think he can still, compete effectively. He played well against the Oregon Ducks, right? Number one team, undefeated in the country in Autzen Stadium. I think Ashton Jeanty will be fine. It's the defense that I'm concerned about. And usually group of five defenses don't fare well against mainline offenses in the Power Four. So I think Drew Aller can have himself a day with this offense. I do think that they can find a way to get the pass game going. They got the pass game going well against the Oregon defense, which has looked a little bit spotty towards the end of the season. I think the Penn State offense can really get rolling after what a dominant win it was against SMU in, of course, Beaver Stadium. And I do think that Drew Aller can get this ball moving. Look at those stats real quick again, so I'm not messing some stuff up.
I don't believe
Yeah,
in Drew Aller. I am not a Drew Aller
don't
truther.
I mean, rushing yard. I mean, they had a great defensive game as well, obviously. Some interesting plays by Kevin Jennings, to say the least, the former South Oak Cliff quarterback. But Drew Aller, Drew Aller was protecting the ball. Of course, he didn't throw a touchdown, but he also didn't throw an interception. Protecting the ball is key, and against, like I said, group of five defenses, I'm not moved. We saw what happened with Cincinnati against Alabama at the time. I mean, come on now. People actually thought Cincinnati had a chance against Najee Harris and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Come on. I mean, Boise State, it's been a great run. I think it ends in Arizona, unfortunately. I'm gonna go with
I
Penn State. Let's say 45 to 21. 45-21.
I really, really, really want to pick Boise State here. I do. I do. Joe, I think Penn State's a phenomenal team. I think they are better than Boise State. But if there's going to be one game, one of these quarterfinals that's going to be close, I have to pick this one. And just I don't want to be the guy who's like, "Oh, history repeats itself." Like Boise State makes their glorious return to the Fiesta Bowl where they pulled off the upset against Oklahoma years ago, and that's their bowl. But I don't know. It's like with Penn State being in it, I feel like it has Boise State magic written all over it. And I do think Gene will show up. I do think it's going to be Drew Aller will show up. There was one play. Drew Aller, great quarterback. Great quarterback. So I don't even know why I should critique him here. But there was this one play, Penn State's first offensive drive against SMU on about maybe it was third down where Drew Aller rolled out to his left and stared him down for about 3 full seconds, and he was like right past the first down mark and just did not throw to him, and
That was
or he
crazy.
made a bad throw, and I was like, what are you doing there? I mean, everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect, but I man, I want to pick Boise State. I don't think it's gonna happen either, but I think it'll be close. Give me Penn State wins this matchup 45 to 42.
Oh my.
Ooh.
A classic. We're getting an instant classic.
Yeah, this one here is a classic.
And by the way, I've made a post on this but in the past too, and like on my TikTok. But this stadium has some stupidly good games. So I shouldn't say like it's a given this is gonna be a blowout. Like I said, any man's ball game, CFP playoffs. We've seen Michigan and TCU have one of the greatest CFP games ever in this very stadium just a few years ago. So this stadium has some magic in it.
Is so is this the same? I think this stadium has gone through a bunch of name changes, but is this the same stadium as the one where Boise State and OU played?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same bowl. Yeah, same stadium. It's the same
So
as where
the
Malcolm Butler had the interception.
okay, so it's
It's the
State Farm Stadium, right?
Yeah,
It used to be what, University of Phoenix Stadium,
yeah, University of Phoenix Stadium.
and then before that, I bet it was something else.
That stadium is crazy, man.
that that stadium also has the Aaron Rodgers like
Oh
27
yeah,
two Hail Mary drive,
yeah.
followed up by the Larry Fitzgerald like 80-yard screen catch and run. That
Mhm.
stadium has some crazy aura. And I'll tell you
TC
what,
Michigan.
you brought up
Yeah.
you brought up the history, Robert. Let's go back to 2014, December 31st against Arizona, Boise State, 38-30 W in the Fiesta Bowl. Let's go back to 2010, a 17 to 10 grind out win against TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. Then you go back to 2007, the instant classic, 43-42 in overtime. Boise State takes down Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. This is the game. This is the upset. Boise State goes into Arizona and shocks the world and takes down Penn State. I don't think any of the matchups favor them. I'm going to be totally honest. But you give them the chance to control the possessions. And if Ashton Genty has a performance like we all know he's capable of, I think they can do exactly that. I think it's going to have to be a game where they play the smartest of their season. Maddox Madsen has to play mistake free. They have to have a well coached ball game. But I think you're going to see a little revival of the Chris Peterson trick plays here in this game. I think James Franklin likes to do it. I think Boise State's going to throw some at them as well. I think you're going to see a lot of trick plays in this game, but I was not impressed with what I saw from Drew Aller against SMU. Penn State won that game handily. Don't get me wrong, but Drew Aller, I did not feel like he played a good game, and I think if he plays like that again, Boise State will 100% have the chance to win that ball game. And then you look at some of the calls James Franklin made. They were up 14-0, 4th and 1 on their own 20-yard line, and they went for it. I mean, you do that against a really competitive football team and a team that wasn't pissing down their leg in SMU. I think that can really come back to bite you because that call, in my opinion, was wild. I know they got it. I know it worked out, whatever. But could you imagine if you gave SMU the ball back and they scored and all of a sudden it's 14-7, you have a totally different game because your ego was too big and you wanted to go for it in your own territory? I just think that's ridiculous. I think Penn State has had a great season, Boise State's had a great season, but all of those things make me really distrust Penn State down the stretch. And I think when you look back at history, history tells you that the Boise State Broncos come to play in Phoenix, and I think they're going to do exactly that one more time. I'm going to say Boise State wins 32 to 27.
Oh, instant classics by y'all. Instant classics.
I
Yeah,
hope so,
mine's
man.
probably less accurate, but
Is this a game? Is this a game in y'all's opinion that like Genty's not having like a crazy like classic, or he's doing like okay, like 100 yards, touchdown? Is this a game where the defense for Boise State like comes through? How do they win this game?
I think
I
this is
think
a
that's
game. You got it, Justin.
I think that has to be how it plays out. I don't think there's a world where Genty rushes for 230 yards, or something stupid. I think a 120, 125 is probably about the ceiling for him in this game, and I think it's going to be a heavy dose of running the ball first, second down, maybe throwing a little bit of play action, but really leaning on him and trying to control the pace with a few big shot plays in the end.
I
Yeah.
think this can be one of those games where it's close the entire time, but Ginty doesn't have any impressive stats. Maybe like 100 yards and a touchdown. And suddenly, in the final 6 minutes, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Ginty's scoring a little bit, not on some like long runs, but suddenly from that 6 minute point onward to the end of the game, and you look at the final stat box, and you're like, wait, wow, Ginty really took over and ended it with a ton of stats. It wasn't like that from the very beginning of the game through the 6 minute mark in the fourth quarter. but I think it's like it could be like one of those final minutes is where he like takes over and really like gets his stats, you know.
I could see that for sure.
And don't sleep on that tight end either, Matt Lauder. I mean, he's one of their best receivers in their pass game. And, Maddox Madsen, he's not just the typical, hand it off to your running back quarterback. He has some good accuracy, especially in that Mountain West championship that they had a few weeks ago against UNLV in a game I thought that was going to be a little bit better, not going to lie. But it
Let
was
me.
very cold. Go ahead.
Oh no, you got it. You finished or you got it?
I pretty much said everything.
Let me just say one thing. The reason why I think that Boise State could upset Penn State here is because two narratives. One is there's always been that narrative that Penn State can't win the big game. You know, they lose to Ohio State. They couldn't beat Oregon. They can't win the big game. I'm not saying that they can, and they've done it, but like there's that big narrative that like they're the vulnerable powerhouse. And when you combine that with a team that's just had success and success in the Fiesta Bowl, and they have this great aura of success and fun-loving team because of it's been so fun to watch Ashton Genty. When you combine that against a vulnerable powerhouse team who can't win the big game, you've got to think this is going to be an instant classic where the upset could definitely happen.
For sure. I 100% see it. What about the next game? Notre Dame and Georgia. No
Oh man.
Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton. I don't know how I feel about Gunnar Stockton. I felt like he looked good whenever we played him, but I don't know how he's going to play against Notre Dame. I really don't know how to pick this game.
I don't either, man. I'm very lost. I'm not gonna say Gunnar Stockton is better than Carson Beck. I still was not exactly believing that. I know some Georgia fans were really calling for his name throughout Carson Beck's interceptions throughout the season. But I don't know if he can have enough of a spark for this Georgia offense going against a Notre Dame secondary, especially that has really thrived in the past month. This defense has just gotten much and much better. Again, I expected a better in-state matchup between Notre Dame and Indiana, but we got what we got. Kirsten had to walk off the field with his head held a little bit low, but he's still talking that talk in the press conference and the post-game presser. I'm not usually a guy that believes in Notre Dame in the big games, but I might have to give them a chance right here. If it was Carson Beck playing, believe it or not, I would actually say Georgia for sure. But I think that this Notre Dame offense can really get going with Riley Leonard, who played a very solid game against Indiana. Wasn't getting turnover happy again, was managing the ball well. I think that Notre Dame can really move this ball effectively, and the secondary can be a key in stopping this Georgia offense, even though they have a lot of threats, especially from the tight end position and from outside, albeit with a lot of drops that we've seen the past with guys like Arian Smith. I think they'll be fine. This should be a close game. I think Notre Dame can really hang in there. I got a close game here in the Caesar Superdome for the Sugar Bowl. I think Notre Dame wins this game 27-24.
You think Notre Dame wins?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right.
So I think Carson Beck is a great quarterback, and I think that with the interceptions, I mean that's definitely lowered his draft stock. He's not playing anymore, and I think that it's been somewhat of a similar situation to the whole Quinn Ewers type of season he's having. You know, like interceptions here and there, but they're still winning. But with him being out, I think that I think Georgia fans are more confident in starting Gunner Stockton than as a whole right now. Maybe if it, yeah, I'm having a hard time saying this, but part of me feels like right now at this point in time, Georgia fans would rather have Gunner Stockton than with Texas. Texas fans would rather have uh uh Archer Quinn. You know, I think Georgia fans are more set on starting their backup right now. Is what I'm trying to say. But with that being said, I think that Gunnar Stockton, he really tore Texas up in the second half. Knew how to game plan, knew how to drive downfield and find the open receivers, uh, call the right plays. I do think that Notre Dame will play well in this matchup, and they're a great team. Riley Leonard, great offense, and Marcus Freeman, great head coach. They know he knows what he's doing. Played well against Indiana and proved how legit they are. But I do think it's Kirby Smart, and I think Gunnar Stockton has proved himself that he's capable of beating a great team in the second half against Texas. And I just think that Georgia is too powerful of an offense still, even with regardless of who's playing quarterback. And I got Georgia winning this one. I want to say it's going to be, kind of close, and then Georgia's going to score another touchdown at the end of the game to go up by two scores. And I think it's going to be about, give me 28-17.
Yeah,
Georgia, 28-17, Georgia.
I could definitely see that happening. I think, I do think Notre Dame can win this game. I don't think this is a blowout by any means. Um, I think the loss of defensive tackle Riley Mills is a huge factor for Notre Dame. He's their season sack leader, and I believe he's also their tackle for loss leader. Um, and losing him for the rest of the season, I think is going to affect them a lot in this game. Now, his backup, I can't remember his name. Um, he came in and had a solid game the rest of the way against Indiana. Uh, but I really don't think that Notre Dame's going to be able to have as successful as a push on that O line, or I guess against Georgia's O line without Mills in the game. And I think although Stockton doesn't have a whole lot of tape on him, I think that actually goes to benefit Georgia a little bit more than anyone. So I do think Georgia wins this game. I think it's close and I think it's low scoring. I think that's the only way Georgia can win this game. I'm going to say Georgia wins 24-20. Um, another solid game, but I really do think that without Mills, they're going to struggle to stop ETN on the rushing attack. They're going to struggle to stop Gunnar Stockton from moving around in the pocket, which I think is one of his strengths is moving around, getting out of the pocket, exploiting the defense with his legs. He obviously did that against us at a really high level. And the way that they play with their tight ends and the 12 personnel is really exciting to watch. I love watching Georgia when they get in that 12 personnel because you got Lawson Lucky and Delp on the other side. They're both good route runners. They both have good hands. They're exciting to watch, and I think with Gunnar Stockton, they're going to have a lot more success of moving the offensive line, getting him out of the pocket, allowing him to move with his legs. So I'm going to say 24-20 Georgia, but I would not be surprised at all if Notre Dame goes in and wins this game. Even wins it by 10, I wouldn't really be surprised. I think this game is anyone's ball game. Nobody really knows how it's going to play out given the quarterback situation for Georgia. But yeah, I do think Georgia comes out with a win.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect, really. I mean, it's the most toss-up, in my opinion, of all the college football playoff games. If Carson Beck was playing, like I said, I think they should win this game handily because I'm never a fan of Notre Dame in big games such as these. But they have a great chance. And this is, again, a historic stadium, a historic bowl game where they don't always show up. But, they're going against a backup in Gunnar Stockton, a five-star dual threat backup, one of the highest rated recruits that Georgia's gotten in the past few years. And like you were saying, he doesn't have a lot of tape, but that could be in Georgia's favor that he doesn't have a lot of tape. They can do a lot of stuff that they haven't done previously with Carson Beck. He's a better threat on the ground. He's also a tough, what, as he
We
saw
saw that hit
his
that
eyes.
Nakuba gave him. Whew.
Oh my God. How do you even hold on to that, bro?
There's
His
no way
eyes
that
were
didn't
literally
give
in the
him a
back.
concussion, man.
Oh my God. They gave him some stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But that poor guy, his eyes rolled all the way back in his freaking head, bro, and still held onto the ball somehow. After that happened, I knew it was over for the Texas Longhorns. But the guy is tough as nails, clearly. He's a threat on the ground as well. He can run, but he's not like crazy accurate, but he can get the ball where it needs to be. And he doesn't really get scared once pressure comes. He had one bad throw, in my opinion, against the Texas Longhorns And it was that throw in the very end where um, Johnny Barron had the interception. He didn't get a block on the sidelines, unfortunately. Would have been nice if he did, but that was, I believe, the worst play for Gunnar Stockton all game. And it ended up almost being costly. So who knows what we're going to see from Gunnar Stockton? Is it going to be a crazy gunslinging contest between him and Leonard? I doubt it. I think it's going to be a close game, like we've all kind of pretty much said.
Let's look at the last game. Ohio State, Oregon. With the performance that Ohio State had against Tennessee, I cannot help myself but to kind of get back on the Ohio State bandwagon because they were dominant. Like Tennessee never had life in that game. And Oregon, this is the worst draw in the world for a number one seed.
Hmm.
You got to play Ohio State after getting disrespected from the entire world with a loss to Michigan, and then they look that good versus Tennessee. I mean, really, really tough draw if you're the Oregon Ducks, but an exciting game for college football. And we believe that the winner will go and play Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Who do y'all think comes away with this one? Because this is another toss up for me. I really have no idea.
Yeah, I got Ohio State. I got Ohio State. I do feel like Ohio State wouldn't have lost the first game with a little mental error by Will Howard right there, mental mistake. I just don't think that wins like that come very often. And if you were to pick any two teams to rematch and play a second time this season, and for the on the second matchup for the result to be different, I would say, yeah, put Ohio State and Oregon together. I I, I just think that that game was already so even to begin with, and Oregon has been great. Dylan Gabriel has been an awesome quarterback for the Ducks this year. Heisman finalist, undefeated. You can't complain. They won the Big Ten handedly, but you know. Ohio State and the Buckeyes, they're playing with, Ryan Day, who's got a chip on on his shoulder about, man, I really got to win it all. People are wanting me to go because I haven't been Michigan yet. I think he's going to tune out the noise. He's going to continue to do that and just play with a little bit of anger, coach with a little bit of anger, tenacity in this game. I think his share that same anger as him, that tenacity, and they're going to show up in this game. And it's funny to think about this matchup too. Like the Fiesta Bowl with Boise State going, this particular Rose Bowl has a lot of nostalgia too. The Pac-12 may not be what it used to be. All those teams may be gone, and it may just be a two-team conference as of right now. But the Rose Bowl is a Pac-12 versus Big Ten bowl. And if you were to ignore the jersey patch on either team's jerseys, you would look at yourself and say, okay, this is just another Pac-12 team taking on a Big Ten team. It's not. It's two Big Ten teams playing each other in the Rose Bowl. But the fact that it still preserves that old common tradition of Pac-12 versus Big Ten with this new conference realignment situation we have going here, and it still kind of preserves that tradition, I think it's great. You know, I just think that both teams are going to show up. It has that nostalgia to the game. It's gonna be the best of the four games, and I think that they don't make those same mistakes again. I think Will Howard's going to be on. I think that Ohio State will show up and play very physical. It's going to be a close game. Give me Ohio State 31-28 over Oregon.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one. I don't know. When Ohio State plays as great as we saw against Tennessee, not a lot of teams can beat that right there. And it makes you wonder, man, where was this against the Michigan Wolverines? You had the biggest rivalry in college football in your backyard just a few weeks ago. Where was this offensive performance? It was nowhere to be found, as we saw, evidently. And, Tennessee just had no answer, really, just from the jump. It was Ohio State's game throughout it all. And Ohio State, you were talking about Ryan Day's had chip in the shoulder. Can you imagine the chip on the shoulder that Dan Lanning has? Man, I'm number one. I'm undefeated. I'm playing in the Rose Bowl. And yet I'm still not favored to beat these guys after we beat them earlier in the season in our stadium. He has to feel like, man, he still has doubters. He has something to prove. And he's going to use that line, of course, or I guess that spread to eventually, tell his guys, man, we got work to do. The season's not even close to over. It's the Rose Bowl, but you're undefeated and you're number one, but they're already saying we're going to lose this game. And I agree with them. They're probably going to lose this game. I got the Ohio State Buckeyes winning this game handily. Will Howard, listen, Dylan Gabriel has had the number of the Texas Longhorns in the past. I'm kind of looking at this through a Texas lens. He has had the number of the Texas Longhorns in that Red River game that we saw just 2 years ago, whether it be through the passing or whether it be on the ground. I would like a matchup for Texas to go against Ohio State, believe it or not. I know they have the Avengers pretty much at receiver. But, I'm not moved really by Will Howard. Will Howard can be a little spotty at times, up and down. When he is going, he is as good as really anybody. But when he is not good, as we saw against the Michigan Wolverines, he is not a good quarterback, obviously. We've seen this time and time again. Against K-State last year for the Texas Longhorns, he looked like a regular quarterback in the first half. Second half, he turned it up. It almost became a shock it all comeback in the fourth quarter against Malik Murphy and the Texas Longhorns, and there wasn't really much to, be amazed by besides that fourth quarter performance. So I think that with Ohio State, their pass game will thrive yet again against the Oregon secondary, in my opinion, that is not as good as advertised in the past. They got a little bit chopped up by the Penn State offense. And I really do think that Ohio State can win this game. And by the way, you were talking about Boise State owning the Fiesta Bowl in the past. Ohio State has won their last three Rose Bowls, I believe. So, especially with Jackson Smith and Jig, but what a performance he had in 2022 in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, like 250, 300 receiving yards, something like that. I really do think that this is their game to lose, even though they're playing against a team that beat them earlier and is undefeated as a number one, AP number one consensus team. I think Ohio State wins this game 30 to 27.
Oof, man,
Very similar. So I'll take the 31-28.
I hope our predictions are accurate because these would be some beautiful games, man. After the blowouts we saw in round one, give us something close. I think we need it as a college football fan base. We need it because the narratives were nasty after that first round. And if anything's going to save the 12 team playoff, it's going to be this second round right here. And can I just say, this is such a glorious uniform and color matchup for the Rose Bowl. I believe the Rose Bowl will be starting at like 2 p.m. in Pasadena, which means as this
Daylight,
game
daylight.
sort of comes to a close, that sun's gonna start setting in Pasadena. You got the green on one side, the the dark red on the other. Oh my God, man, I cannot wait. I hope I'm home from the Peach Bowl in time to watch this game because man, that scene is going to be beautiful. With that being said, though, y'all both picked Ohio State. I think for parity's sake, I gotta pick Oregon.
Oh,
Um, I think this is a toss-up. I really do. Y'all both said it. When Will Howard's playing his best football, I don't know if there's really a whole lot of guys that are better than him. Um, but when he's not playing his best, he looks like a mediocre quarterback. And I think though that Dylan Gabriel and Oregon have a good enough body of work. They've been tested enough. They got to watch film, although Ohio State laid a thumping on Tennessee. I do think that they got enough film where Dan Lanning's had enough time to prepare for this game, a team that they've already played. I think it's going to be close. I think it is going to be a classic Rose Bowl. But I do think Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks escape with a win. I'm going to say 35 to 32. Another really close game, but I think Ohio State or I think Oregon gets the ball late, drives down the field, gets that game-winning field goal that they need. But regardless, man, this game's a toss-up, and I think I know Texas fans would much rather face Ohio State than Oregon. in the Cotton Bowl in a couple weeks if Texas can go on to win against Arizona State. So I'm going to say Oregon gets it done, but that game's anybody's game as well.
Man, we're about to be fed. We are about to be fed. I don't think I said Texas is going to be a blowout, but I would really love to see a close game. For some reason, I would love to see a close game. But I wouldn't mind a blowout either. I wouldn't mind a blowout either. I'm just saying. I'm not really decided. But
When it's Texas, when it's Texas, give me a decisive win, man. Give me a decisive win. I can't take a close game against Arizona State, dude.
yeah,
When it
but
comes to Texas football, I don't even think you need to ask for it to be a close game. I think that's a
oh yeah,
given.
it's kind of a given.
True.
The cardiac Texas Longhorns.
With that being said, we'll see y'all next week after this game concludes. We'll talk all about it, all about the other games. Hopefully, we got more football after this Peach Bowl. We'd be excited to talk about the Cotton Bowl. Hopefully, if we get to the Cotton Bowl, everyone can go down there. Maybe we can record a podcast from Dallas. We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of things on the table. Who knows?
Oh,
But with that being said, thanks for tuning into the 40 Acres Football Podcast. Justin Gooseman, Robert Gonsolin, Joseph Duffy. We'll see y'all next week.